Hello, I am Luecreasea Horne, and I will be discussing the Tom and Zarina Johnson Williams family. This is a unique family story, not only because I am a descendant of that family, but because of the circumstances it took the family to get to Nicodemus, Kansas. I am a sixth-generation descendant and the daughter of Janella Holmes, who is the daughter of Luella Holmes Williams, who was the daughter of Charlie Williams, who was the son of Emma Williams, who had the first baby born in Nicodemus, who was the daughter of Tom and Zarina Johnson. I have found a profound sense of pride working on this research project. The information I have discovered is priceless. Thomas Johnson was born in Georgetown, Kentucky in 1830. He was owned by Vice President Richard Mentor Johnson of Georgetown, Kentucky. Martin Van Buren was the president during Johnson's tenure, 1837 through 1841. An awesome opportunity for the Johnson family and several African Americans came along when W.R. Hill and Roundtree, two of the founding fathers of Nicodemus, came to the Georgetown First Baptist Church and told the people about an opportunity to come to an all-black town and be landowners. Several people took advantage of this opportunity and took the leap of faith of leaving the only place they had ever known. I imagine it didn't take too much to convince his wife Zarina, who was born in 1832 and was also a slave on Vice President Johnson's plantation, to leave Kentucky and start new in Nicodemus, Kansas. Thomas and Zarina and their family loaded the immigrant train in central Kentucky in Sadieville and rode the train all the way to Ellis, Kansas. Once the group of 350 called the Lexington Colony reached Ellis, they then had to walk 35 miles to the northwest to reach the promised land of Nicodemus. They arrived on the Barren Plains on September 17, 1877. We have records of Thomas's homestead's papers he received on June 16, 1889. Thomas' homestead was 160 acres, and it is located about 3 miles north of the town site. President Grover Cleveland's signature is on Thomas Johnson's homestead papers. Thomas was a deacon at the Georgetown First Baptist Church. He also helped charter the church in Nicodemus along with Reverend Silas Lee. Reverend Lee and Thomas baptized 22 souls in the spring creek that flowed in front of Thomas Johnson's dugout. This information is from Lula Craig's manuscript. Thomas and Zarina came to Nicodemus with their children. Henry Johnson, the eldest, was 21 when he arrived in Nicodemus. Henry married Mary Robb in 1877, and their marriage was the first marriage in Nicodemus. The ceremony was performed on his father's homestead. Henry was a charter member of the Masonic Lodge Zerubbabel Lodge number 44. Henry was a homesteader as well. His land was just south of his father's land. Henry received his homestead papers on June 12, 1889, 160 acres, and President Grover Cleveland's signature is on his papers as well. Tom and Zarina's two daughters also came along with them. Ella Johnson was 18 when she reached Nicodemus with her family. She was a single black woman that was also a homesteader. The Homestead Act of 1862 was a significant piece of legislation, not only because it opened up the West to new opportunities, but because it did not discriminate against blacks nor women. Ella's homestead papers show us that she received her papers on May 9, 1906. This single black woman received 160 acres, and by this time, the president that signed her homestead papers was Benjamin Harrison. Ella eventually marries J.C. Coleman, and while she was still a Coleman, her father, Thomas Johnson, gave her some land. It was 80 acres, and this land is located east of the late Gil Alexander's home. She received this on September 28, 1889. We also have records of Ella's husband, J.C. Coleman, selling her some land on March 31st, 1908 for $300. In today's market, you would need $7,691.82 to purchase the land Ella bought from her husband. My people were doing big things at the turn of the century. Ella owned a home on the Nicodemus town site. This piece of property is located across from the First Baptist Missionary Church. Right now, the only thing remaining is a water pump. Luella, my grandmother, took care of her during her older years. My mother, Janella, has a piece of her namesake. Emma was 24 when she reached Nicodemus. She was married to Charles Williams, but she traveled to Nicodemus without him. Emma made the trip with her father, mother, brother, and sister. Charles stayed behind in Kentucky and promised to come with the second group of about 150 people in the spring of 1878. It is believed that Charles stayed behind to continue to work and save money. Charles gave his beautiful Emma a rose before she left. The rose ended up with Henry's granddaughter, Yvonne Sayers. While traveling from Georgetown, Kentucky to Nicodemus, Kansas, Emma was 8 months pregnant. I can't imagine making that trip pregnant. The grit and toughness of these pioneers is on another level. The Lexington colony reached Nicodemus via train, then walking for 2 days, they reached Nicodemus on September 17th, 1877. Emma gave birth to the first baby born in Nicodemus on October 30th, 1877. He was named after his Uncle Henry, which was a slave tradition to name your children after your siblings. Hill was his middle name, which comes from the founder of the community, W.R. Hill. Once Charles made it with the second group, Charles and his wife worked on their homestead. The homestead papers showed them receiving their patent on October 29, 1892, 160 acres, and President Grover Cleveland signed their homestead papers. Showing that hard work pays off and working hard on their homestead, it is recorded that Emma and her son Henry were the first ones in the community to market stock, cattle, and hogs in quantity. This information was in the Western Cyclone, one of our newspapers here in Nicodemus. Charles and Emma had 5 children. Henry married Cora Ward. Maggie married Calvin Sayers. Charles married Elizabeth Risby. Clara married Tom Wellington. Neil married Anna Burnside, and his second wife was Cora Davenport. Charles Jr., born April 12, 1881, and he had a first wife, which was Ellen Coleman. With his first wife, his first child was Mary Ellen. We are fortunate enough to have a picture of his first family. We have no documentation or oral history as to what happened to his first family. Charles Jr., his second wife, Elizabeth Risby Williams/Garland, born January 12, 1891, Elizabeth traveled via train through Kansas with her family, trying to reach the promised land of Nicodemus with the second group of settlers that in 1878 coming to Nicodemus. Unfortunately, her family was put off the train in Solomon, Kansas, because one of her siblings died of the measles. The family walked back to Abilene, where they stayed and lived. Elizabeth went to school with President Eisenhower in Abilene. She receives her teaching certificate and she moves to Logan County, south of Oakley, to teach. We believe this is how Charles meets Elizabeth. Charles' sister, Cora, is living in Logan County. Visiting his sister, he must have met Elizabeth and made her his wife. Elizabeth was the postmistress in Nicodemus, and she was officially commissioned in 1921 through 1933. We have 5 generations of postal workers in our family. Charles and Elizabeth lived in the house Charles inherited from his Aunt Ella. That house was located across the street from First Baptist Missionary Church. Charles lived a full life, but it was cut short when he died from an asthma attack. 2 of his children were present when he died. Charles and Elizabeth's children are Emmeline, Margaret, Theresa, Charles, Eugene, Luella, my grandmother, Ernestine, Chester, who is still living, Alberta, Charlesetta, Wanda, and Loretta. My grandmother Luella, the 6th child of Charles and Elizabeth, was born and raised in Nicodemus. At a young age, she married Dave Bronson and had 5 children with him: Ethel, Donald, Richard, Charles, and Karen. My grandmother married for a second time and had 3 children with John Holmes. She met John while he was working on the Webster Dam. There was a fatal accident on the dam, and the workers wanted to give their co-worker a proper funeral. They needed someone to sing and play the piano. My grandmother went. My grandfather heard her sing and told one of his co-workers that he was going to marry her. The co-worker said, "Not her, she has 5 kids." My grandfather did not care. They eventually left Nicodemus and raised their family in Topeka, Kansas. My mother, Janella, married Terry Petrie, a Hill City native. She had 3 children, myself, Michael, and Terry Jr. We lived in Kansas City, but we left Kansas City at a young age and moved to Hill City, Kansas. I attended middle school and high school in Hill City, and I graduated Hill City High School in 1996. I graduated from Fort Hays State University in 2001. During my college summers, I worked as a park guide for the Nicodemus National Historic Site. I was the first descendant that was the first park guide for this historic site. Eventually, I got married in 2007, and I was blessed with an instant family. My husband, Tyrone, had 2 young sons that I love dearly, Christopher and Deontay. Then, in 2013, we were blessed with an addition to our family, our little girl, Lauren L.